Our story begins in front of the Umbaran Airbase watchtower as Captain Rex is walking with the men of the 501st to go and arrest General Krell. Directly in front of them, leading the way as always, was Ahsoka Tano. When the Jedi Council received word that Anakin was being recalled from Umbara and General Krell was being dispatched to replace him, the Council decided to send Ahsoka to accompany him. It would be a good test for Ahsoka, seeing how she handles a battle with a commander that wasn't Anakin by her side. Plus, she could help balance out the different way that Krell goes about using the clones. But Ahsoka arrived many hours after Krell, showing up on Umbara just after Rex and the men refused to execute Fives and Jesse for going against Krell's orders to blow up a command ship belonging to the Umbarans. When Ahsoka arrived, she heard about all the terrible ways that Krell had been treating the clones. It made no sense to her. The men were extremely loyal and effective in battle, but treating them like humans only made them better. In fact, Ahsoka despised Krell's strategies more than any other Jedi. She brought it up with Krell, and Krell said he would consider her words, but then he sent her into battle with Rex and the 501st. Krell told her and the clones that the Umbarans were wearing the armor of the men of the 212th Legion. So, Ahsoka ran into battle with Rex and the men. She cut down 5 clones before she and Rex realized the truth. Krell lied. He sent them in against their own men. Ahsoka's hands were shaking as she realized she just killed her own clone troopers who trusted her, and this was the last straw for her and the clones. Now together they marched into the tower elevator. None of them spoke. The plan was to surround Krell and take him alive, unless they have no other choice. The elevator rose, and Ahsoka closed her eyes, gripping her green lightsabers tightly. She wished Anakin was here, but she also knew this was a test to see how she handled a mission without him. Of course, it had to be complicated, but she would do whatever it takes to protect these clones. The doors opened, and she and the men surrounded Krell. Ahsoka demanded that Krell explain himself. Krell laughed, saying he doubts the clones would have ever figured out the truth without her, and he launched a force pulse all around the room. Ahsoka blocked it, holding her ground, and the clones slammed into the wall. Krell ignited the 4 blades, and Ahsoka flew in, slamming her 2 sabers into him. Ahsoka and Krell moved in the small area, lightsabers swinging against each other, and the clones got to their feet, hesitant to fire out of fear of hitting Ahsoka. The 2 of them were moving so quickly. Ahsoka flipped backwards towards the window, and Krell didn't hesitate, diving into her, smashing through the window. They fell down, Krell using an open hand to punch Ahsoka, and she kicked away, landing hard on her feet. Krell landed behind her, laughing with delight as the darkness flowed in him, and he took off into the Umbaran jungle. Ahsoka caught her breath as the clones came down to regroup. She suggested that they all split up. She will go into the jungle, draw out Krell, and she ordered the clones to stay by the ships, monitor the outskirts of the trees. Should he try to escape, they must take him down. If he tries to go all the way through the jungle, he will find Kenobi and his team. If he tries to take her out, she will be ready. Rex didn't like the idea, but he trusted Ahsoka. Ahsoka ran into the jungle, lightsabers ignited in the dark red fog and mist, looking all around for Krell, and then his voice came around from everywhere. He mocked her, saying she cannot stop him. He's seen the future. She sees the clones as human, and yet when it matters most, they will behave like every droid she's cut down. His laughter echoed through the fog, crawling under her skin. Ahsoka turned in every direction, and finally, a shadow dropped from above. Krell crashed down. Ahsoka barely rolled aside as his first strike shattered the tree behind her. Krell swung hard. She ducked under a heavy sweep, then slashed upward near his chest. Krell roared and slammed his knee into her stomach, knocking her backwards. He followed with a strike that missed her and carved into the ground. Ahsoka vaulted onto a tall root, flipped behind him, striking at his back, but his second saber whirled behind him, catching her attack midair. Krell's saber spun like saws, moving faster than she could see, cutting through trees, vines, roots, and Ahsoka was meeting him blade for blade, twisting her body through the tiny gaps. But his strength was relentless. She caught his strongest swing, but the strength behind it shattered her block, and with a single motion, Krell's saber sliced through her left arm. Ahsoka screamed in pain and shock as Krell seized her by the throat, hurling her into a massive Vixus plant. The tendrils coiled instantly, wrapping around her body as she gasped for breath. Krell looked down at her, saying the council was foolish to send children like her into a war that was beyond her abilities. As she was thrown around, Krell took off towards the airbase. The Vixus plant slammed Ahsoka against the ground. The impact knocked the breath from her lungs, her vision flashing white. Pain seared through her body. She tried to reach for the Force, but every time she focused, another tentacle wrapped tighter, crushing her ribs, dragging her closer to the gaping mouth. Mud and blood were mixing across her face as she was pulled into the teethy mouth now. As she was pulled in, Ahsoka could hear the sounds of blaster fire, the distant screams of the dying clones. Krell's lightsaber strikes were heard cutting through clone armor, and as Ahsoka was pulled into the mouth, something in her broke. Grief, rage, guilt, they all took over as she used used this newfound power to tear free, ripping the plant apart, and the saber flew back into her grasp. She looked to her left arm, severed at the elbow, and she used the pain to fuel her as she wrapped a piece of her ripped clothing around it. The screams from the base had stopped, but the silence was worse. She sprinted to the base, and standing amid the carnage of bodies was Pong Krell. Ahsoka screamed with primal fury, diving towards Krell. Her saber sliced across his back, sending him falling forward with a roar of pain and anger. She raised her weapon to finish him, but Krell reached a hand out, and he pulled the last surviving clone into his grasp. And Krell had his lightsaber pressed to Rex's throat, telling Ahsoka that he will kill him if she takes another step. Ahsoka froze. Krell backed toward a nearby shuttle, dragging Rex with him, then tossed the injured captain inside as the ship roared to life. Rex yelled at Ahsoka to finish it, but she couldn't move. The ship rose up, and the darkness in Ahsoka faded as she fell to her knees, surrounded by clones. She wanted to throw up. Umbara was a nightmare. She felt like she'd failed everyone. And from here, everything was a blur for Ahsoka until she was back on Coruscant, standing in front of the Jedi Council with Anakin by her side. She had a new arm, similar to Anakin's, and she was still getting used to the slight delay of movement that it took whenever she tried to use it. Her mind was buzzing with the memories of fighting Krell, being thrown into the terrifying plant, seeing her men die, watching helplessly as Rex was carried away. She was broken, and Windu told Ahsoka that she is going to be grounded on Coruscant for a while until she's mentally ready to go back into fighting. Anakin didn't know what to say. He felt terrible for leaving Umbara, even though it wasn't his choice. And finally, Ahsoka raised her head, asking if they have any leads on Krell and Rex. Plo Koon spoke up to say that they expected Krell to go straight for Sereno, so they dispatched some ships to nearby moons, but no Umbara ships ever appeared there. Either they scared Krell away, or he has different plans than going for Dooku. In reality, shortly after leaving Umbara, Pong Krell knocked out Rex and sent a distress signal to the Separatists, saying that he's a Jedi abandoning the Republic and he has a valuable prisoner for their cause. Dooku received the message, and upon learning who the prisoner was, he told Darth Sidious, and Sidious knew exactly what to do with this prisoner. He would contact Krell himself, sensing the former Jedi's darkness, knowing he could be trusted, and Sidious would give Krell the coordinates for the planet Wayland. It was close to Krell, and he made it to the hidden mountain base on Wayland just in time to have his back surgically repaired from Ahsoka wounding him. Sidious had Krell bring Rex here in order to test out some new techniques for ensuring clone loyalty to the cause of the coming Empire. So Krell would be stationed on Wayland as he recovered, as Sidious thought he would make an excellent Inquisitor when the time finally comes for the new Empire. And back on Coruscant, the days would begin to go faster and faster for everyone, except for Ahsoka. She was grounded on Coruscant for the time being. Anakin could tell that she reached into her deepest, darkest emotions on Umbara. He knew the toll that could take on any Jedi, and it was secretly at his own request that the Council keep Ahsoka in the temple. So, as Anakin returned to battle, Ahsoka spent every day doing the same mundane meditation exercises, training exercises, helping younglings with their own studies. She spent a few hours every day in saber training, getting used to her new hand, and Anakin had recorded a bunch of hologram training for her, describing what he felt like when he got the new hand. Over time, she would get the hang of it, and Ahsoka began to miss being out there, but every time she thought of the war, the memories of Rex, Jesse, Fives, and the others burned away in her mind. And out in the galaxy, Anakin was being used more and more as a rover than a true general. He was being sent to battle after battle, wherever help was needed, as putting Anakin into any battle was kinda like a cheat code, whether it was fighting alongside Obi-Wan, Plo Koon, Fisto, or teaming up with the Bad Batch for a fight. Anakin was almost always helping push the Republic to victory, but even with the regular wins, Anakin missed fighting alongside Ahsoka and Rex. It made the harsh war feel a bit less grueling, but he knew that Ahsoka needed time away from it all. But while on Coruscant, Ahsoka was doing something else in secret. Once every few days, Ahsoka would sneak into the Coruscant underworld with a handful of stolen credits, and she would find a mechanic with a junction box. Here, she would spend an hour on a frequency that she, Rex, and Anakin used as a distress frequency if there was ever an emergency. Ahsoka would sit here for an hour, hoping that Rex would access the frequency at the same time, but he never did. Eventually though, on Wayland, Rex would manage to break free of the restraints holding him down while the base security was rotating. At this point during the war, Tantus security was quite minimal. Humans that Palpatine trusted not to leak anything outside of this planet, along with Krell, who was now in charge of the security. But Rex broke free, stole an access card, and got to a communication terminal. He accessed the secure frequency right as Ahsoka was about to head back into the temple. Rex smiled for the first time since Umbara as he heard Ahsoka's voice. He sent her the coordinates to the mountain, quickly ending the call. Krell. Rex knew there was no escape, so he ran to the hangar, making it look like he was trying to leave instead of trying to call for help. When Krell caught him, he contacted Sidious, and Sidious said they're done being careful. If Rex does not survive the next process, then so be it. No more testing. Krell responded that it will be done, and Rex was secured back in the chamber. Sidious decided he would be going to Tantus himself to see the coming results. And on Coruscant, Ahsoka would immediately go to the council with this information, saying that she knows where Rex is. She gave them the info, and Windu looked to Yoda before asking if she was certain that this was him. And is she certain that this is not a trap set for the Jedi? Ahsoka didn't quite understand. Of course she was certain. Only Rex and other clones knew of this frequency. Ki-Adi-Mundi spoke now, saying that the Separatists are not afraid to torture clones for any useful information. They must be wary of the possibility that Rex has become compromised, and this frequency is now being used against them. Ahsoka was adamant that they were wrong, but the council said they must be patient. Ahsoka would storm out, saying that Rex doesn't have time for patience, and it would be Obi-Wan who caught up to her in the hallway. Obi-Wan told Ahsoka that he believes her. He's seen firsthand how loyal Rex is to her and Anakin. He knows that Rex would die before giving up information on anyone. Ahsoka asked why he didn't say anything in council then, and Obi-Wan sighed before saying that this goes against all of his better judgment, but he has an idea. Cody and the 212th men still remember Umbara. It pains them deeply to think about it, and they are stationed here on Coruscant for the next few days to regroup and recover. Obi-Wan told Ahsoka that if she goes to Cody, she will have the army necessary to go find Rex, but there will be consequences when she returns. Ahsoka smiled, telling Obi-Wan that Anakin seems to be rubbing off on him, and Obi-Wan couldn't hide his own smile, as he said yes, and he wouldn't have it any other way. In just a few short hours, Ahsoka had snuck off to the Republic barracks, telling Cody and the 212th everything, and Obi-Wan was right. Cody rallied the men, secretly loading up an entire Republic Venator, and Ahsoka stood on the bridge as they prepared to take off. But then the doors opened behind her. She turned around to see Plo Koon. Ahsoka fumbled for words, saying this isn't what it looks like, but Plo chuckled, saying he hopes she's going to find Rex, and Anakin ran in behind Plo, telling Ahsoka that he wouldn't miss out on this mission for anything. And so Plo, Ahsoka, and Anakin would stand on this bridge together as the unauthorized Venator rose through the clouds. In the council, Yoda would watch it go, and he turned to Obi-Wan, saying that he hopes Kenobi knows what he is doing. Obi-Wan's voice was caught in his throat. Of course Yoda knew that he did this, and Yoda left the council, leaving Obi-Wan to hope that Yoda was right and he did know what he was doing. And now in hyperspace, Anakin, Ahsoka, Plo, Cody, and a few other clones stood around a data table, going over what they knew about Wayland. It was a forest planet with tall mountains all around, and the coordinates provided point right to one of the largest mountains on the entire world. It's quite possible that a secret separatist base has been built in the mountain. Ahsoka asked why they would be keeping Rex alive. Anakin didn't have a good answer. Maybe it was to lure them into a trap, just like the council said. Maybe it was simply to try and extract information out of him. Whatever the reason, they must be careful. Finally, the Venator would come out of hyperspace, and there were no defenses in space here. Clearly, whoever created the base did not think it would be found. 4 landing teams would be sent in, with Anakin, Ahsoka, Plo, and Cody leading them. And inside of the Tantus base, Sidious was here with Krell. Sidious was observing the initial stages of cloning Force-sensitive beings in preparation for his own future endeavors. He had no plans of dying, and in many years, he would finally achieve the immortality that his master only dreamed of. The clone trooper experiments looked to be going perfectly, but before Sidious could continue observations, intruder alarms began ringing out. He cursed Krell for his lack of security, demanding that his Red Guards escort him back to his shuttle. Sidious would get to his shuttle quickly, taking off from the backside of the mountain base. But this was where the 2 landing teams, led by Anakin and Plo, were headed. As Sidious rose up in his shuttle, Anakin and Plo both reached up, grabbing the shuttle with the Force. Plo crushed the engines, and Anakin would drag it to the ground as it fell hard in the distant trees. Anakin, Plo, and 30 men of the 212th moved in to find out who was inside. On the front side of the base, Ahsoka, Cody, and 30 more 212th troopers flew around the mountain turrets, landing hard in the hangar area. There were security droids here, and the battle droids moved in, firing at their enemies. A few clones would fall, but Ahsoka and Cody moved in, taking down this first wave of droids and moving further into the base. But deep in the heart of Tantus, Pong Krell moved towards the hibernation capsule, activating the new secret weapon of the space. Clone X would step forward, and Krell gave him a mission: eliminate the intruders. Clone X coldly said it would be done, and he moved in. Back in the Wayland forest, Anakin and Plo found a hole carved into the crashed shuttle, and they both knew it was from a lightsaber. Anakin moved inside of the shuttle, and he was hit by confusion and horror. Inside, the bodies of 4 red guards were here, either dead from the crash or from a lightsaber wound. It made no sense. These were Palpatine's guards. And nearby, in the trees, the 30 troopers with Plo and Anakin were looking around, when suddenly a ghost wielding 2 red sabers flew in, cutting them down quickly. Plo Koon didn't hesitate, ordering everyone to retreat. This was not a fight for any clone. He ignited his blue saber, telling Anakin to get out of here. The surviving clones would run back to the base, and Darth Sidious emerged to face Plo and Anakin. Anakin asked who was under the hood. Why was he with the royal guards? Plo Koon already knew the answer, and deep down, so did Anakin. Sidious held out his 2 blood-red sabers, telling the Jedi that this truth will die with them. Sidious hurled a wave of Force lightning, then spun in towards them. The bolts shredded leaves and branches, and Anakin raised a saber, absorbing the storm of lightning, while Plo dashed forward to meet Sidious's strikes. Sidious struck at Plo, and then whipped back towards Anakin, catching his saber. Anakin rolled across the ground, then swung with a clash that forced Sidious down to his knees. Plo Koon leapt over a fallen tree, deflecting a sweeping red blade aimed at his throat, then landed beside Anakin as they swung together for Sidious. The Dark Lord unleashed his full power, lightning pouring from both hands, wrapping around them. Anakin caught it, then motioned to Plo, and so Plo leapt onto a falling log, quickly driving his blade towards Sidious's chest. Sidious deflected, but the impact would send him crashing down into the mud. Anakin landed forward with all of his strength and speed, locking his blue saber against the red of Sidious, with Sidious's wrist twisting as Anakin drove through him. Plo's blade followed a moment later, piercing through the Sith Lord in a final cut. Sidious gasped, and then his body would fall still. Anakin finally would remove the hood, and his worst fears were realized. He could now only hope that Ahsoka and Cody were completing their mission. Inside of the Tantus base, Ahsoka and Cody indeed moved through the halls. The rest of the 212 had split off into another section, searching cell blocks for any sign of Rex. Ahsoka and Cody moved into an experimental room, and through the shadows, 2 figures emerged from the far end of the hall, Pong Krell and a clone in black armor. Krell ignited both double-bladed sabers, and Ahsoka flew forward as their blades clashed once more. Krell fought with wild strength, remarking, looking at Ahsoka's arm, that he's glad Ahsoka has a constant reminder of him where her arm used to be. His strikes were heavy, but this time, Ahsoka didn't let her emotions consume her. She stayed centered, using his momentum to spin and slash at his knees. Her blade grazed his armor. Krell roared, driving her back with a series of moves. But she was ready, letting the Force guide her rhythm, and Cody took cover as the Shadow Clone was firing at him. Cody dove behind a crate, returning fire in short bursts. The Shadow Clone, it moved like a ghost, and their blaster duel tore through the room until both of their blasters were shot away, and the fight turned to hand-to-hand combat. Cody caught a punch, swung the Shadow Clone into a wall, then got slammed back with his visor cracking. They exchanged brutal hits as the Shadow Clone overpowered Cody, pinning him down, raining down punches. In desperation, Cody tore at the man's helmet, finally ripping free, and froze in horror. He was looking into the eyes of Rex, but Rex's eyes were glossed over. Clearly, this wasn't him. He was different, mind-controlled or something. The moment of shock was all it took. Rex pulled a vibroblade knife from his belt, thrusting it forward. Cody barely twisted, and the blade would stab into his shoulder instead of his heart. Cody still screamed out in pain. Ahsoka heard it. The sound reminded her of Umbara when so many clones fell, and as she stared at Krell, she knew it was time to finish this. Krell swung for her left arm, but Ahsoka rolled over it, cutting across Krell's chest, then landing behind him and stabbing right through his back, ripping her sabers through him. Krell fell dead, and nearby, Rex lifted his blade again to kill Cody, but as he swung down, a flash of green cut through the air as Ahsoka sliced clean through Rex's arm and sent the knife clattering to the floor. Rex fell back, and Ahsoka ordered Cody to hold him down. Cody locked Rex's shoulders to the ground as Ahsoka closed her eyes, touching Rex's head, reaching out through the Force. She reached into Rex's mind, finding layers of commands and conditioning. She pushed deeper, breaking the hold bit by bit. Rex convulsed, eyes rolling, and finally, the tension would leave his body. When his eyes opened, Ahsoka knew it was him again. She reached down, hugging him tightly, saying she was so sorry for everything. Reunions would come later on though, as right now, the base began shaking violently. The 212th clones not involved in these duels got to the reactor room and didn't hesitate to blow it up. Rex, Cody, Ahsoka, Anakin, Plo, and the 212 clones would fly out of the Tantus base as it went up in flames. On Coruscant, Ahsoka Anakin, and Plo Koon would stand before the Jedi Council, and while they would face discipline for this unauthorized mission, it did end in complete success. They'd exposed the darkness that ruled from the shadows of the Republic, and they also saved Rex. The council chambers were lighter, with the unfamiliar feeling of hope that many council members had forgotten could exist, or for masters like Kenobi, they felt hope that they never experienced in these chambers before. In the political vacuum left behind by Palpatine's death, Padme Amidala stepped forward to lead the Republic. Her leadership was calm and strong after all these years of deceit. She had the newly independent Separatist Senate that separated from Dooku after the revelation of Palpatine working with him opened genuine peace talks. Senators from across the galaxy would gather under one Naboo roof, and far from these Senate chambers, Dooku and Grievous made their final stand above Megiddo, leading the remnants of their forces against the Republic. It was a desperate battle, but in the end, Yoda and Obi-Wan would lead the assault that ended it. Dooku fell to Yoda's blade, his final moments spent in silent realization of how much he'd been used. Grievous met his own end as his ship exploded in space, and the Clone Wars were over. Weeks later, Yoda would ignite his saber in front of Ahsoka, declaring her a Jedi Knight. At the same time, Anakin received his promotion to Jedi Master, a wonderful moment for both of them together. And far from Coruscant, on a quiet farm on a remote world, Rex and Cody, along with other clones, would build a home and spend their days fixing machinery, tending to crops, talking about the war and their brothers. Ahsoka and Anakin would visit often, laughing over meals, enjoying their company. The Republic slowly reformed into something more balanced, and the Jedi Order became guardians again. Peace returned, thanks to the mission to Wayland. And folks, that is our story for today. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. I definitely did. Yeah, came up with this idea a few days ago. I think Penty's done it. I don't know how it went. It's titled like, what if Ahsoka went to Umbara or something. Anyways, good friend of mine. Hope it wasn't the same as this. Appreciate you guys listening. I feel like this was a different path than maybe expected. Honestly, a duel between Krell and Ahsoka, intriguing. I guess I don't know who would win. I know that in season 7, Ahsoka beats Maul, but that's, 3 seasons later, so season 4, I guess I'm not sure. Yeah, it'd be interesting, especially in the jungle. I think that environment actually favors Krell more. Anyways, yeah, Krell won the first battle. Killed all the clones, took Rex, and we did, in the Bad Batch, if you guys watched it, there was Clone X, the Shadow Clone, with that black armor, and I wanted to do the same with Rex. Honestly, kind of wanted to do a little bit more with it, but maybe another time. Yeah, thought it was a fun idea to explore, and it's a reason to keep him alive, a reason to keep the mission going to Tantus, which it had to have been built during the Clone Wars. There's no real confirmation of that, but I don't think they get all that built up, and anyways, rambling. Thanks for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed. And of course, I'll see you in the next video.